Colicky's nothing more than I have no idea what's going on with your baby, but good luck.
Hello, hello, and welcome back to another episode of Mind Your Mouth podcast. My name is Melissa Mugno, and I am your host. I am so excited to drop in with another amazing guest, but not just a guest. As you guys know how we do it over here, it's always somebody that I like to hang out with, somebody that I like to talk to in my regular life, and we're just going to bring that conversation right here on camera. And today is no different. So today, I am going to bring on a very, very good friend, colleague, person that's in that mind growth headspace. I'm going to let him introduce himself because he can do it better than anybody else. JT, welcome to Mind Your Mouth. Come on to the podcast. Tell everybody who you are and what makes you so special.
Yeah, no, thanks, Melissa. Thanks for having me. It's an honor to be on your podcast. My story's been kind of up and down throughout my career, more positives than negatives, but there's been some tough times along the way. But pediatric dentistry, I graduated from the University of Michigan, did that really well, opened a couple of practices. I love story-based brands. So I built what was called Every One by One, very different, right? No dental in there, but everyone come to the dentist by age 1. That eventually grew into about 7,000 families. I was seeing a ton of kids. And it's really just trends in their bodies really taught me that eventually an epiphany moment. We all have kind of epiphany moments in life where you're just like, wow, this is working, this isn't working. I either recognize it and I pivot and I move, and it's really action is what obviously makes things happen. So I pivoted, I did pediatric dentistry traditional model for about 15 years, but in 2016, I literally let go of the keys of everything. And that wasn't easy. My family was growing. My family needed revenue to make it happen. But I had this passion for going after the source. I had an amazing grandfather, and he's now passed, but Grandpa Fahey, who's in my book, which we'll get to, taught me that prevention obviously was the best medicine. But he said this one line to me that stuck, and he said, a doctor's really not a doctor unless he can stop the problem before it starts.
Wow, that's a pretty big statement.
Yeah. And he was basically saying, you can put Band-Aids on things and genre. A lot of you can just say, oh, you are cavity free and you're good to go for 6 months, or you can recognize bigger problems. So
I love that. That's actually something I did not know about you, the grandfather. It's actually something we have very much in common. I talk about my grandfather a lot on here as well. But I want to just, as I was sitting, as we were introing, you said that word storytelling. And, I think one thing you and I have in common is like the themes of, everything happens perfectly, exactly divine timing. And storytelling keeps coming up a lot these last couple of weeks. And I think people that can tell great stories and can move people, because storytelling is a pretty old, it's a gift. It's a talent, right? It's something that not everybody can do perfectly. And when I think like you and I can sit and just BS and talk stories all day, and I love like everything about you. When I think of you as a person, as a friend, I'm like, that is a great book. Like your story is something I'm interested in, right? Like, and I think a lot of people, I almost want to say they know that you're a good, like, if you guys are in the airway space, we know you're a great dentist. You did tongue ties, you did all that stuff, but go in a little bit, if you don't mind, a little further back of like, who are you as like a person? Like, why are you so different? Like, you're like, you have all these like big brand concepts, like big motivational, like, radically kind. Maybe start there a bit like of who you are in that different space.
If everybody always says, if you got on a podcast and you had to sum yourself up in just a couple of words, which is hard, right? And which is hard to take your whole life and throw it into a couple of words. I would say relentless problem solver. That's it. And I just happened to run into medicine and dentistry. So relentless problem solver then kind of pairs with operations and systems. Like in order to get processes, there's kind of, practices that are kind of C, B, and A. C is like, every day we show up and I work with nice people and we fly by the seat of our pants. And over time, we kind of have a lot of punishment, but we kind of figure it out, but we're kind of dysfunctional. B is your B practice is like, we should probably break this stuff down. We keep running into the same problems and we probably should write it down. And the tough thing about writing it down is, like I always say in healthcare practices, things go into cabinets and die, whether it be supplies. But that manual, if someone writes it down and it goes in just for onboarding a new employee, and then it goes in a cabinet, and then A-level dentists are like constantly going back to that manual. So as a relentless problem solver, the only thing that's made me great has been those systems and processes. So, and some of that comes from my childhood. My dad was not military, but he was, pretty militant. And there was 5 kids and we all had to be in order. So he systematically kind of raised us.
So you would say discipline was something that's been in your life pretty early on.
Discipline. I don't really believe in motivation, because if you need motivation to get up in the morning to do what you do, you're probably not passionate about what you do. You just want to do it. You just want to go. So yeah, no, I mean, whether it be from the fuel I put in my body to the exercise program that I still put myself through, to be strong, to have effort, to be able to make those systems go, that is the engine. So the most important part in all of this Airway concept is the $1 wire that connects the battery to the engine. So lots of people, I know we're getting a little off track, but lots of people are taking CE. Lots of people are taking CE, which is awesome. And so they're filling themselves up with knowledge. But like as dentists, we're like tinkerers. We figured out anesthesia a long time ago. We figured out different things by basically tinkering. So I am a tinkerer that relentlessly goes at a problem, usually leveraging technology to be more efficient with not only my time, but my patient's time. And I continually just kind of go back to that. Well, what's the problem? And systems are really like A to B to C to D to E. Repeat with good customer service. A to B to C to D to E. The practices that are struggling, people that are struggling even in our lives, we really don't have a system for exercise. Like I hit my alarm in the morning and I get out of bed within 3 minutes, right? So same thing with these practices. And what if you're just going from A to E to B to C to D, you never really figure out what the problem is, whether it's in life or in practice or in love or relationships. It's just that self-reflection of this is not working. And honestly, if it's not working, I'm going to pivot. Or if I'm interested, I'm going to pivot. So I know I'm a good leader at this point, but my teams know that we're not going to settle for something that's broken.
Something that's last. And I actually, and I just want to say something, there is no on track on this podcast. And because that is the truth. Like I really always say, like, I don't mean this, like people could listen to you on lots of podcasts and people could find you in different places. We try really hard here to just have authentic conversations. And I always say, like, I just wanted to bring the conversations we were having off camera on camera. And, one of the things that I find with Airway that people make it a little bit more complex, and I think you and I have this in common, is we want to help people. We want to be able to make people's lives easier, because I do think people are geared to make their lives a lot harder than it have to be. And systems are actually meant to help us to be more efficient and effective, and to be able to see patterns and scalable and all of those things that we need so we can have the time in our lives to do the things that we want to do and spend with the people we want to spend, require good systems, but they do require a bit of that D word, that discipline word. And we've known, you've watched me go through my own transformation. One of my fundamental issues was I was always a problem solver. I just had no discipline. I didn't have discipline in my personal life. I let my mind, my monkey mind, and my emotions run my life. And I had no emotional discipline. And I actually think our friendship in the beginning is you are one of the most emotionally disciplined people I've ever met. And here you and hopefully, we were attracted or hung out with each other as a friend position. Like every time I would walk away from a conversation with you, I was left feeling inspired. I was left with a good sense of curious for more, like interested for what could be next. But I always felt seen. And I always felt like That was a really great use of my time.
Well,
And
it's
but I feel as though like every time I've, and it's been years now, I've gotten to see you, I've on stage or talking, I've seen you have that same interaction with multiple people, but it still feels so authentic. I don't feel like you're doing anything textbook. And I thought, wow, using systems in a way to elevate and bring things is, and for me, that's how when I look at everything you do, whether it's HealthLatch or the books or things like that. And I don't know how many people know that about you. Maybe they think they know you, but I'm like, no, he's on another level. Like, maybe people will say ahead of your time, but that's a skill. And I just think that's a part of what I want people to get to know about you is that every conversation you're in it. Like you're really paying attention. You remember things, people's talents. And I think you see their greatness. And I think that's something that you've brought into your business development, your book writing, HealthLatch, like things like that. So me saying that, I don't know if that sparks your mind or what you think of. I'd love people are out there trying to build brands, build things, help people. And I don't know if they know how to do those things.
Yeah, no, I mean, and that's really, I think, the legacy piece of my career. I have done the clinical, I did the access to care. I've now gone after a niche to actually help people. I mean, if you were to talk about the book, and the book's called Why Babies Suck, it's out on Amazon now, and it is resonating with populations that I did not think was going to happen. And I kept saying before I hit this magic button on Amazon, I kept saying, I feel like there's something inside me that's feeling like something's going to change as soon as I hit this button. And part of it was like, is this going to go to scale? And I'm going to go from being an introvert that like tinkers in his office and is relentless problem solving to being exposed, and having to do with that. But the cool thing is really at the heart of this book, which solves an educational piece that's missing, right? Mm-hmm. But it's really why I wrote the book. I was sad for moms, specifically moms, but parents that were apologizing for what they knew was right. And so the book, just like anything, just like a system, any book, I had to become a student of writing a book first before I could even put pen to paper.
This was your first book? No, right?
This is my first book.
First book, okay.
Going back.
Just for people, let's just get clear. Okay, so you are naturally going to be compared, like, how is it different than the other books out there? How is it different than tongue-tied, sleep-wrecked kids, all these things that are out there? Why your book and why babies? Why babies, or what's different about it?
Well, if we look at the problem with babies right now, and it's what I see over and over again in the clinic, and it has nothing to do with a latch at that point or a tongue tie. It's actually an educational problem. That is really the problem you're trying to solve. I was trying to solve in the book. And so to become a student of the book, the first thing is I met with some people that were helping guide and coach me through it. And if you can imagine, I got on something like this. And as we do in the whole like breathing space, I don't use the word airway. We can talk about that later, but in the whole breathing space, they were like, well, what are you all about, Dr. Thomas? And I started to go into my story. And the story is pretty epic because I've done a lot of things and I've made a lot of pivots and I didn't keep the straight path. So they're like, well, he's got the story. But then I started going into a little bit of clinical, which I tend to shy away from, when I talk to people, and maybe that's why it looks genuine, Melissa, is when I talk to people, I'm not going to be, life's not knowing who you are. It's knowing who you're not. Mm-hmm. And I'm not, the thing I'm going to add legacy piece to this breathing space is not going to be what Dr. Zaghi does. It's not going to be what Richard Baxter does, because they are awesome at what they do. They are great clinicians. They are great speakers. But I think my portion is less on the clinical side and more on the systems and processes side.
Because a lot of, just so everyone's clear, like, so yes, you had a fabulous pediatric practice, ran it, sold it, but then you also had very, very popular, very busy tongue tie. I don't want to call it a tongue tie center, but a very desired, people are flying to come see you all over the world, whatever, in Seattle. And in a sense, you could have just been happy there. Like you could have just hung out and just done that, but you didn't. So I just want people to know it was always pushing more. And why a lot of doctors would have just been happy having a premier tongue tie, lactate, with great systems. Why was that not, why not just stop there?
It goes back to the problem. I mean, the problem isn't tongue tie. I know it's kind of shocking to hear that, but in the book, I was a little bit concerned about how my colleagues would relate to the book, because I think in chapter 7, I basically say, when I talk about the New York Times article that came out in December of 23, that kind of said, there's just this business of people cutting babies, right? Mm-hmm. And that's definitely not what we do at HealthLatch, but I kind of sat on it. Again, I'm not really a social guy that gets on and just kind of says, all these things are wrong, but I just kind of sat on it. But like at the heart of some of the problem was when we originally figured out this stuff about tongue tie and breathing, and is we messaged it towards a procedure, right? Mm-hmm. And what we should have done is message it towards a therapeutic problem, right? Tongue tie gets all the press, but oral dysfunction is actually the problem that causes the airway issue, right? Causes the structural change, causes the behavioral issue. It's that pattern recognition. And again, back to my story, I'm basically pattern recognition, right? Mm-hmm. So if you look at the problem that book is trying to solve, and if I would just say, what is the resolution that comes from Why Babies Suck book? Hopefully, if it gets in enough hands, is that moms feel validated. Period. That's
because
it.
Feeling like most moms have all of these things happening to that, like things are happening, right? Like they're feeling uncomfortable. They're not connecting with their babies. Like, it's just harder. Again, I think just to be simple, just harder than it should be. For the most part, we got to a place, especially 2016, 2017, that releasing the tongue was the answer. And ultimately, we actually just had this conversation. We met with, and we'll go into your new team and the things that you're doing. But I even said from a myofunctional standpoint, it's really not about the tongue. The tongue is not really big. It's one very small part of it. But up until 2016, I mean, when I was in Airway prior, I couldn't get anyone to do a tongue tie. So it went from like a real big extreme. I remember 2013 getting a phone call from, Dr. Chris Farrell. We were doing stuff with MyoBrace at the time. And he said, if I hear that you're talking about tongue ties one more time, like we're going to have bigger issues. And I was like, I just don't know if I can fix this problem if we don't address that too. So there was this pendulum swift, right? Everything became about tongue tie. And then I think people thought that was the magic bullet, right? Was that like, and the New York Times article kind of was a moment of like, whoa, hold up. Are you guys maybe, and I don't think it's done with malice. We know a lot of those colleagues and nobody was doing anything. It was trying to answer a problem, but the problem is big. And so for some people that have no idea what we're talking about, because as we've been growing a little bit, there are definitely people that are like, what could be some problems from a mom perspective, Dr. Thomas? Like, what would you even say there?
No, I mean, in summary, before we get into the problems, like when I went to write the book and I got on with this coach, and I literally did what so many people do when they get excited and passionate about talking about all these clinical issues. I was like, blah, 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 just like garbage out of the mouth as fast as I could. And the team, the biggest lesson about the book is the team just said, whoa, Dr. Thomas, you are 10 books. And I was like, 10 books? I was like, this is going to be my one and only book. I'm going to write this book. I'm going to go through it kicking and screaming, but this will be one and done. And they said, no, you're 10 books worth, because you have a ton of information that you have learned and gleaned and throughout your career. But a book is about one thing. So you have to pick one thing, because if you do in a book what we do when we're with each other as colleagues, and you just vomit all of this information, and that's even what we do in front of a patient care, right? We're so passionate about wanting to tell that mom chair side that Billy is like squirting the wall with the air water syringe and destroying the office while we're sitting there going like this. And in that setting, don't get me wrong, that dentist is so passionate, but that mom is so overwhelmed with the environment that out of the 10 or 15 things that dentist says, she probably remembers one. So clinically, that's where I massively leverage technology, videos and stuff like that. Hey, mom, that's a great question. In the gist of this presentation or this appointment, I want you to know that answer intimately. So I shot a video about MTHFR or whatever the topic is, and I'm going to drop it over text to you. So when I go back to the book and they said, this has got to be about one thing, Dr. Thomas, and that's messaging, I basically told them originally, I said, well, the journey of every family that comes to me goes through three processes. Again, process, system, right? Mm-hmm. I'm recognizing a pattern. They go through intuition, awareness, and advocacy. And pretty much every family that's in the breathing or area.
Slow that down again. Say that again.
They go through intuition, awareness, and advocacy. All right. So it goes something like this with a baby, and you can relate this to any age. I know there's something wrong with my kid. I live with them, my vagal connection, skin to skin time, all the things that are happening at breast and bottle. Even a dad knows this. They're like, this is not correct. My intuition is telling me this isn't normal. The nose that sounds nasally, the baby that's clicking, the big gulps, the frustration, the shoulders forward. They don't know what it is, but they kind of have this inkling, and we all have that. But the problem in the system right now is that in the referral patterns of healthcare, that's kind of broken a little bit. They're getting no awareness, right? So they can't get out of the intuition stage and get to the awareness stage because they're not bumping into the right professional, right? Or the referral track's wrong. And you cannot get to advocacy if you're not aware of the problem. So when I take families from the time they text me the first text with a value explainer video that tells them who I am and what I do. So you asked me, I'm trying to cover all your questions because a lot of them are really good, Melissa. And I would love to speak for hours. And that's where I'm heading in that legacy consulting piece, because I've been through all the pains. I'll be honest with you. Right now, I'm currently going through a pain, and I'll tell you about that later. But like, if you can't get them from intuition to awareness, and that dentist can't communicate effectively, and they're not leveraging technology, they'll never get to advocacy. I even talk about the money piece, right?
Yeah. Well, when you say advocacy, what do you mean by that? What do you say? Like,
everyone wants to be an advocate for themselves or their baby, especially their baby. Like, and when you educate families, and I love access to care, but to educate families properly, I need to spend a ton of time with them. Like, I need time with them.
Time is money.
That's right. And as soon as I make them aware, because we do a story-based brand and storytelling, right? Mm-hmm. So that means we collect all their data before. When they literally walk in the doors of HealthLatch, we already know almost everything about them. They don't even have to check in. They're going right into a room. And we're starting to ask the higher up questions back to them so they know we actively learned before they even arrived. Right?
So the patient already knows that you already put the time and effort in to get to know them before they even walked into your door. So they're already they feel seen. They already, like, you've already done some of those touch points where a lot of offices are really wasting time because they allow that linger, because a lot of people are afraid to change people don't like getting comfortable being uncomfortable. So they just stay in the same patterns.
So I'm just going to say it openly. I kind of look at what dentists are doing, and I typically go 180 degrees in the opposite direction. So they call it a medical history form. I call it a story form. Those are two totally different things. A medical history form is like checking symptoms, right? I'm just checking symptoms and telling you my medicines. A story form, when you leave a story form box and you tell them to speak to me like they would speak to me if they were standing in front of me about their child, their awareness that they're slowly getting, their intuition that they're having, they will literally like crazy, right? And it even flows over, and this is the practice management I'm getting into in terms of consulting. If you look at the HealthLatch reviews, it's not like Dr. Thomas, he combs his hair nice and he came after hours. It literally, they're telling their story. Everybody always says, like, how do you get people to tell their story? Well, if you took them from intuition to awareness to advocacy and they had a transformation, they want to tell other people. They want to tell a lot of other people. So you just have to give them the avenue to tell that story.
Give them a place to tell their story, and then they will go and tell everybody they'll continue to do it. Because most people, when you think of a health history form, you think of somebody trying to fit people. Like I was just filling one out the other day and I was like, I don't fit in any of these boxes. I don't know. I'm like, and even if I did fit, I always want to write on the side because I don't like to be put in a box. So then that form makes me feel like I wasted my time because you didn't really know me. You didn't get to know me. You just wanted me to give you basic information. Then I'm going to go into the room and take up a ton of your time because I'm going to tell my story because no matter what, I need to feel seen so that I feel like you understand how to treat me. And I think that's a big disconnect, right? Like, I feel like we don't do a lot of that. And when with the book, just in general, just so people say, like, even going through it, it's an opportunity for parents to really connect with the story and understand that they're not alone. They're not crazy. They are right. It's not in their head. It's validating. And that validation then I think gives people a lot of power to then go seek out the type of care they desire, like that they deserve and they need.
And once they become aware, honestly, money goes out the door because especially at the baby stage, like everyone wants to help their baby. There's not a parent that has a baby that says like, let's kind of half-ass this, they go after it. So, but it's making them aware. Then they will, if they don't have the funds to afford my care, they'll go to grandma. They'll go to grandma and be like, grandma, like there's a big part of the book that talks about what do you really need before you have this baby? Like, do you really need 8 onesies that have pit bulls on them? Or do you need a GoFundMe for a lactation consultant and a body worker and a craniosacral therapist? Like, how much love would people love to give other family members if that baby shower was no gifts?
A wellness shower. Yeah. Right.
It's in the book, right? It's in the book.
You know how many people spend, I think I just looked at it before we came on, upwards of $1,500 on a stroller, right? Like, and I don't get me wrong, it's like a car. Most strollers will still get your kid from point A to point, you know what I mean, to a lot. So it's like anything. We invest our money and our time in the things that we think are going to create an experience or whatever. And you don't know what you don't know. And it's true. I did think, Natalie, my oldest, is a perfect example of how I got into this space. My mentor, Mike, pediatric, orthodontist, wife was a pediatric dentist. Our daughters are literally a month apart, 4 weeks apart. And they had more money than I did. There was not a doubt. She knew it. And they invested in lactation and in a doula and all that. And I couldn't. And I thought that was privilege. Like, I didn't know that that was even something I could, and they're 16 years old. That was 16 years ago. I didn't even know that I could invest into those things. I didn't even know what it could do to save me for Natalie later on. Night and day situation 7 years later when I had Jackson, because my mind opened up. I changed. I'm really grateful that because Brooke did that, we ended up meeting with a neonatologist. Like, on a business end, I learned, and I realized this isn't a first world problem. Like, this is a problem for everyone. We just didn't know what we didn't know. And I do feel as though that was my take when I looked at the book, was like, you are opening the door about giving permission for moms to look beyond, and that, everyone deserves to have a provider listen to a mother's intuition. Yep. Because there is no better medicine than that. Like,
because what does the outside world do to that mom, right? She tells the mom that it's natural. And don't get me wrong, I understand what the breast does to the oral cavity, right? It is the rapid palatal expander at a baby stage, right? It opens up the nose, it gets baby relaxed, right? I understand what the breast does. But when we say to moms over and over and over, this is natural. And then the marketing side, the product side, then shows mom in a room with a soft light and the baby's at the breast and there's beautiful music in the background. That's not what most moms' lives are when they come to me. No. They're just exhausted and they're triple feeding and everybody's telling them it's normal. And then people are saying your baby's colicky. Colicky's nothing more than, I have no idea what's going on with your baby, but good luck, So it's a very different thing I got myself into, which I love to do every day. But I can bring intuition. So I want you to know, first first 3 chapters, right, are basically intuition. Second 3 chapters are awareness, and third 3 chapters are advocacy. That's how the book Why Babies Suck was written. Every book is written like a hero's journey. I can bring that back to you. When I met you, right? It was different. It was a different Melissa when I met you, right? Your intuition.
She was very insecure.
Yeah, your intuition was most likely telling you that the people that you were associating with at that time, the things you were doing, was not a circle that was making you healthier, right? So you had to get to that point of awareness, right? And
yeah, I didn't know that I could trust myself. And because of that, I then looked for outside people to confirm my sense of identity, my belonging. And therefore there was this lack of trust. And I think that comes with patients in general, that we look outside instead of inside, and the work was inside. And most parents 100%. Don't know, and especially new moms. What do we know? We don't, you don't know anything. I mean, you're scared. You're looking at your mother who probably did a number on you, and your grandmother. Generational trauma comes into play there.
But I gotta say, once you recognize that problem in yourself and your own journey, which I don't know everything about, to be honest with you, and I played maybe a little role in just cheering you along, you eventually became an advocate for yourself, did the work, right? Mm-hmm. The work is the work, right? And I've been honored to kind of watch your transformation, Melissa, be doing the amazing things you're doing every day. So,
well, thank you.
But it's just, it's.
But I think a lot of people are afraid to look inward, right? Like I think a lot of people, here's an interesting thing I'd love to bring up. What the one thing about my transformation, and I think this goes into parents or in any situation, my transformation has made a lot of other people very uncomfortable. And I think I didn't expect that particularly. I was just trying to survive or whatever. And I realized when I started to heal or I started to get more comfortable, how many people didn't know what to do with that. People actually preferred me being broken, or maybe it made them more comfortable. And I felt like that there's an irony to that in even our healthcare system. I mean, do people like us to stay needy and broken, and we want to, attach ourselves to these old patterns? Because all of a sudden, when you get a little bit more confident, you can trust your intuition, you can advocate for yourself. You don't just accept BS. I don't know. I ask better questions. I want to know why. I want to talk about something. I want to be seen. I've raised my standards.
Yeah. I mean, there's an author that I originally followed, and a lot of books speak to me, and his name's Bob Goff, and he's a super happy guy, and I've seen him speak in person. But he says, in one of his books, he says, I quit things on Thursday. It's just like, so I was just like, you read more, and he's such a busy guy that he realizes in order to stay healthy, he has to let some things go. You have to say no to good things, right? And so his response to people, he might be on a board, and everybody loves him on the board, but he's getting so busy, he doesn't have time for family, or he's self-assessing, and this isn't working, and I'm getting unhealthy because of it, and it's hurting me internally or hurting others around me. So he basically let go of the board. And then when people would come up to him and they would be like, Bob, but we want you on the board. You're awesome. His response, because he's a happy-go-lucky guy, he'd go, but today's Thursday, and today I quit things on Thursdays. Thursday's my quit day, and today I'm quitting. And it's just like the outside world doesn't need more than that, right? They maybe want more than that from you. Maybe the whole Airway space wants more from me. Maybe Peter wants me to speak more, or maybe more people want me. I don't go to a lot of conferences.
So, okay, let's go back a little bit. Let's talk about it. So one of the coolest things that came out, when you came out with HealthLatch, for any of you guys, HealthLatch, so just to tell the listeners, so HealthLatch is your practice, but you actually did create the health, well, you explain it. What was the original circle? Or you could go in, providers could find each other.
Oh, that's coming back.
Yeah, but I mean, that was really revolutionary. I mean, it was amazing. The colors, the brand, the mission. I mean, it's fire.
And again, it was a system problem, right? The outside world doesn't know what a craniosacral therapist is. The outside world doesn't know who to go to first. The outside world doesn't know why they'd want to go to an ENT or a pediatrician or a dentist that does tongue tie. So the HealthLatch Circle was my effort to basically just corral all the professionals and say, and it took me a while to figure it out, even as a systems guy, and say, okay, these people are functionalists, and these people are structuralists, and these people are proceduralists. Functionalists are the therapists. Structuralists work on the body, the chiropractors, right? The proceduralists are the people that do tongue tie releases, right? And the circle part of it, I thought was genius. I was drinking my old Kool-Aid, but it's just like until we put this mission into the hands of the actual people that are consuming it, or that would be the patients, it's not going to really fully take off, right? We have pushed it uphill, but the messaging's got to get better. So some of the funny things that have happened with the book is my colleagues, even good friends of mine, they'll actually like DM me or text me, and they'll be like part of the way through the book, and they'll say surprising things. And you've probably got this in your life where they're like, JT, this is a really good book. And it's like, and it was really maybe, I take them all as kind compliments, but it's just like they had a perception of me that I couldn't maybe orate this message of helping families, hopefully worldwide. And then, other aha moments with the book, I was bold enough to put my email in the back, my emails in the back. And so I'm getting emails. I got one the other day from a 60-year-old woman from Australia. And she basically said, I'm just a reader of books and a reviewer of books, and your title kind of caught me. Like, why babies suck? Why does this guy think babies suck?
It's a great title.
Yeah. I've got a lot of acclimates from just the title. And I came up with that early, and I was like, I thought I would offend people. And I have a circle of people, Robin Glass at Children's Hospital, that I sat down and I said, I think I'm going to call it Why Babies Suck. And at first she was like, I don't know, JT. But then once she read what was in it, she was like, this is a good title that matches the intuition, awareness, and advocacy. But back to this woman, she basically said she cried the entire time. And that's what happens at HealthLatch every day. And what she was crying about was she didn't realize the amount of trauma she went with when she was feeding her kids at the early stage. She didn't realize that the problems they had in their journey were related to oral dysfunction when they were babies.
So many people have no idea.
Yeah. So like, again, when I pushed that button on Amazon, I didn't expect to get an email from a 60-year-old woman that totally thought my book was trauma releasing, you know? So it's just kind of cool.
I think trauma releasing comes, that was I always say me getting into this Airway, whatever space we're going to call it, which we can go into why we don't call it Airway. But my true beginning of my journey of my healing was getting into this space, because that first course I sat in and somebody put up some slides showing that maybe I might also have a breathing issue and I just wasn't a bad kid that didn't want to wake up and go to school in the morning. Sure. And that I had these other things. Somebody all of a sudden gave me a little bit of this moment of like, wait a minute, maybe there is something bigger structurally that was going on. And it wasn't that I was just some defiant young lady that didn't, like there was a bigger reason. That was the first time I had ever heard it. I was told that, I don't think she did it intentionally, but I was told my entire life that I was a baby that chose to have my days and nights mixed up, and I never let her sleep. Like as if I would, that was her issue of her feeling her own guilt. And then that I was always a picky eater. The power my grandmother and my mother gave me as an infant. You would have thought I came out as Hercules. And I do like to direct a room and I do like to maybe own the show, but man, I said, you guys really you relinquished all your power to me right away. And, my relationship between me and my mother, I was strained early on, right from infancy. And I don't know if a lot of moms know that, like the issues you're talking about, why babies suck. she said I couldn't latch. I couldn't suck. I didn't do all these things. So I was colicky. I was up all night, all of those things. And that defined me as a person.
Yeah. And I can't say enough, I think this goes, I'm trying to tie in some of the original questions. The part that I love about this is not this transaction of fees. If I could get rid of the transaction of fees or codes, I'd be a much happier doc. And I'm actually trying to shed that. I mean, I'm building a new model that I'm completely trying to shed that. But I'll give you two scenarios, one with a baby and one with a 9-year-old. Same exact scenario. So mom comes in, nipple pain, mastitis, clogged duct, the stuff we hear every single day, right? And really what we're doing through that story-based exam is helping her realize that this was not her fault. The baby is basically passively feeding, right? The baby's passively feeding at the breast. The babies will passively feed just fine at the breast in most scenarios because the hormonal milk supply is held for 30 days. So that's why mom might be like, oh, it's really painful. And then someone kind of says, well, it's supposed to hurt at first. And then baby grows, but where the breastfeeding relationship really falls apart, there are outliers where mom has a lot of milk, but around 30 days, if the baby's passively feeding and no one's picked it up, right? No one's picked it up. The hormonal milk supply is going to go down after 30 days because it goes to an on-demand feeding, right? And it's so easy for me to help families understand that pattern. So I could tell them all these things that I know and blah, blah, blah. But if I just help them understand that your baby is passively feeding. And then I have this moment with most moms. I read the room well, so I know the ones not to do it to. But I just think it's really important that mom knows it's not her fault. So I usually kind of reach over, and I'm an emotional doc, so I usually kind of grab her forearm and I'll say, hey, I just want you to know, based off of what we're seeing in the exam and all the stuff you guys have been dealing with, it's really not your fault that you could not breastfeed your baby. And then usually the human experience is that that person would kind of push back, like, this is a little uncomfortable for me that this doctor's doing this. And they'll usually say something like, it's okay. And then I'll say, I kind of emphasize it again. I just really want you to know this was not your fault. It was the baby's passively feeding. And that's where the emotion starts to come, right? I'm not trying to make people cry, but maybe that person can't let go of that trauma unless
you're releasing that valve for them.
That's
you're
right.
letting them into that.
So now real quickly on the 9-year-old, right? 9-year-old's now wetting the bed, right? She's been wetting the bed since he was an infant, right? Can't go to sleepover, can't go to parties. He's in a pull-up, he or she. He comes into this office and we take him through intuition, awareness, and advocacy. Sorry to beat you over the head with that, but that is the process, right? So we take him through intuition, awareness, and advocacy. And I sit across from that 9-year-old because this is a very important point, especially for a male. And I just kind of grab his hand and I sit him on the edge of the pediatric dental chair and I say, hey, I just want you to know these things we just discovered, these connections. I've been talking with you because I include the child at that point because they're going to go through the treatment and I need their help. And your mom and dad is really not your fault. Child does the exact same thing. Oh, it's okay, doc. And they kind of distract and they kind of look around and I say, hey, no, it's not your fault. And then they have that moment, right? It's just like, oh my gosh, I couldn't go to birthday parties and everybody was telling me that it was my problem. And it was so hard because I was trying so hard not to wet the bed, And then you take them through that transformational expansion. They can breathe now. They stop wetting the bed. It's just like, that is the referral source. The transformation is the referral source. Like, it's not this, like, I can honestly say, I've done very, 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 very little marketing. No sponsored ads, no Google ads. To me, the storytelling, the transformational moments will fill your practice more than you ever wanted to. But you have to get down to the level of understanding their concerns, the act of listening we talked about, the leveraging of technology to really explain the problem to them. So yeah, no, it's a very different take.
That's a really, like, as you're sitting there, just even saying that from one colleague to another, I'm also guilty for a long time. I always knew I could do therapy differently. I knew I could do it, but I like all of us, we get caught up in the business or the money or, all these other things. And I had just had a conversation you and I met, and I do want to get into how you've changed your process. And we met with your new OT, occupational therapist. And it was the first time you kind of we hadn't had a chance that I had told you how I've really been changing the way I do therapy. And it's interesting because there was a moment I made the decision maybe last year that faceology, maybe I didn't need it anymore. I was like, you know what? It's whatever it is. I surrendered in a way. I was like, I had kind of stopped finding fun in therapy, to be honest. It was becoming daunting. I was more excited about the business aspect. And then I did the work with Munchie, and you and I talked about that. And I got so excited about the body, and then with my own transformation, my own movements and stuff. And I started taking all of these cool pieces of my mindset, my advocation, me connecting, because when I do an intake, it's very much similar. I'm very involved with the person. I use, how I feel energy and connected to patients. And then I stopped paying attention to the tongue. And I really just started paying attention to what is this patient or this family need right now? Do they need grounding? Do they need activation, integration, stabilization? Those are our three things. And then I started treatment planning from this perspective of the body. And yeah, we might talk about the tongue too, but who cares? We'll get there let me get to know you. And all of a sudden, therapy got exciting again. And I started treating different. And then, people are filming and they're so open now. They're like, yeah, use the videos. And these stories are now putting together presentations. And everyone's like, well, what are you doing different? And I'm like, I'm just connecting with the people. I'm letting their dysfunction really show us, look at what their body needs. And then all of a sudden we got on a call the other night and I feel like we were, right, we just clicked right into where you were already at. So I would love to know, what was that moment for you? Because you've changed your approach a lot.
Oh yeah, no, the whole book is basically the mention is therapy first approach, basically. And I'm at the level with the babies where I'll turn away families if they just want a tongue tie release. And, I just am, because where that ends is they think the main problem is the tongue tie, but you're looking at the plagiocephaly and the torticollis and the gas and the bloating and the tension and the tightness. And so it's actually, I don't want to say it's worse to do a tongue tie release, but if the house is on fire and you do a tongue tie release while the baby's house is on fire, you have now made the lived experience for mom and dad miserable, right? Because now we got a wound on top of a house on fire. So even though it continues, I continue to try to shut down my own business. To be honest with you, I keep hurting by building better systems. And that's fine because that's what I love. But it's just, they see Paige first no matter what. They don't even get to me. So there's the value explainer video that was there in 2016, because I've evolved, is a very different value explainer video. 2016, it might have said something like, I've spent a lot of my time learning about tongue tie, and I traveled the world and learned from Marty Kaplan and all these different people, and I do a good tongue tie release. Now my value explainers video says very boldly, because I love transparency because it builds trust even before they come in. And families acknowledge that when they come in, they'll say something like, man, that value explainer video you sent me, it was just a breath of fresh air because you told me exactly the process my child was going to go through, exactly how much it would cost, exactly what we were going to experience, and on and on. So my value explainer video says something like, this isn't about tongue tie at HealthLatch. If you're coming for tongue tie, this is probably not your place. I can refer you to other places that might evaluate you for tongue tie. We're coming for whole health on your baby. I work with an occupational therapist who's such a talent. She goes into gut biome. She goes into everything with the families. And then I always end by saying, because I truly believe it, I say this will be the best appointment your family's ever had for your baby. And I think we can stick by that because the two of us coming together. So they go into the room with Paige. Paige does full functional, and she knows enough to be able to say, do they have a lip and tongue tie? And then I just come in and I basically say, Paige, what do you see? Now, Paige is the person that determines, can this baby have this the same day or not? Okay. Not me. And the thing that's cool about that in the system is families think this guy does a procedure to everyone. And so after we make them from intuition to awareness, they're like, can we do this today? I literally go like this. Hey, Paige, are we doing this today? And then they kind of look at me like, wait, you're the doctor. Why is she deciding whether we can do this today? Because they now are motivated. And I then say, because we do not release babies that have an uncoordinated suck or other problems that they're dealing with. And it's just like this huge weight drops off of mom and dad even, because they're like, oh, he wants to do this right. He's even withholding his own procedure that brings him finances, right? So everything, Melissa, I'll be honest with you, in summary, none of the way I practiced have been easy. And I owe a lot to my family. And I mentioned them in the beginning of the book.
You do have a wonderful wife. She's pretty special.
Yes, she's... And she, I'll be honest with you, she's the one that's taught me about brand. She's a marketer by trade, very talented, but our talks, I've been honored to sit across from her at dinner and all the things I get to do with her. And we just have conversations about, what do you think about this? And it's hard for me to hear some of them because I want to go a different direction. But to be honest with you, she's usually right about the story, about the messaging, what we should do, what we shouldn't do, who we should work with, who we shouldn't. So
she's got very good intuition. She knows good energy. She's definitely aligned on that. So, let's chat a little bit. So for everyone that knows, like Dr., GT and I have been chatting for a long time about consulting and business, and we've gone back and forth a lot because, I'm a doer. That's who I am. I don't have a lot of patience. If your house is burning down, you want me there. I will run back in and I will save the cat. But my passion in this space was I had some really great mentors, and I realized early on in my career, I had worked for dentists that were we had really cool businesses. This one group I talk about, Whitehall Management, was this consulting company. And I'll never forget, I was in this practice. Upstairs, we didn't take insurance. Downstairs, the dentist's cousin was a dentist and he built an insurance model. So literally same building. And we had a lot, we were packed, we were always full to the brim, and it was a different experience upstairs, right? Like I always would say it felt like you were in a high-end store, department store. We all looked apart. We learned a lot in that place. And I learned that dentistry could be a lot of things. It had lots of different legs. And then as I went on to some other practices, I realized, wait a minute, not all dentists practice like this. So I was almost shown what could be very early on. So then when I went into other practice, I was like, why are you doing it this way? There's such a better way to do it. And then I found this common pattern with dentists that got into Airway that I think I'd be curious what your thoughts are on this. Most of them have a story. Most people get into Airway. If they're doing it for money, they usually will fall off pretty quickly because there's a lot easier ways to make money in dentistry. Sure. But they all have a story. They had a child, they had a personal story, and then they all are getting into a part of their lifestyle, maybe of legacy or purpose or whatever. But when they implement Airway, unfortunately, it highlights all of the dysfunction they have in their regular practice. Yeah. And it creates lack of stability, uncertainty, and then it feels like more money's going out the door. And because I was a small person, I could come in and I could do 2 or 3 practices a year and I could do all the things. And, I learned over years and I've scaled a little bit, but ideally you do things on such a grandiose thing. And we've always been going back and forth. So when you think of consulting or think about systems and operations in this place, what do you think that you can bring different, or how is your approach going to be, different or your space?
Some of what you described, it depends on what that office needs or what they want to do. And that's just like we do with the babies. That's a discovery visit, right? What's going on? What's going on is, are we just a revolving door of employees right now? Is that our problem? Are we hiring the wrong people? Are we not onboarding them properly, before they even step in the clinic? For me, a team member that I would hire, especially back in my pediatric dental days, wouldn't even hit the clinical floor until about 3 weeks in. They're at home watching modules of like pulps and crowns and how to talk to a family, how to motivate a child of different ages. So they're literally just watching, right? And then they eventually come into the office and they're like, oh, I saw that in the video and now I'm seeing it in real life. But there's just so many problems in a lot of practices that I'd love to help with because what's really happening, what you just described on the breathing space is doctor, which is great. Doctor goes to a weekend seminar with everybody there, the ALSC, and they're just like, wow, this is so cool. This airway stuff, I'm pumped about it. They have that personal story maybe. But what happens is a lot of them go home and they basically go to morning huddle on Monday and they're like, guess what I learned this weekend? We're going to start doing it on Wednesday.
Yeah.
And they have no
preparation,
systems, no processes. Patient has no idea what they're doing. Parent has no idea what they're doing. And don't get me wrong. We figure, as tinkerers, going back to that tinkerers in dentistry, the dentist will figure it out. But there's a lot of people that if you actually gave them the playbook, gave them the onboarding process for their employees, gave them the way to schedule it, gave them all that stuff, the systems, then it would help them beneficially. And that's that legacy piece for me. When I say consulting or coaching, I don't think, I'm going to make some funds from it. But it's like the legacy would be that I gave the playbook to other people so they could see a massive amount of kids and help a massive amount of kids out.
Because I believe that it's really like I made a mission statement, a new kind of a statement the other day is like, why do I not leave the coaching or consulting spaces? Listen, I believe in this mission so much. It's in me. It's what I believe in every aspect of it. And the only way to help people is to create amazing, awesome, radically cool practices all over the country because access to care is important. I think that there should be one place in rural North Dakota that has a doc that couldn't do all the things. They shouldn't only have to go to cities. But when it feels hard, and staffing's a big issue right now. I mean, staffing is a big deal. I mean, I'm not going to think like that. There's a change. There's, you have different generational stuff. There's a lot of moving parts right now. And if you're a little afraid and you are that doctor that's drilling and filling and you're one of the biggest producers of your office, it's hard to stay on top of everything, plus be present for your family and find time for yourself. And there's a big need. And I always say, if you really love dentistry, like a lot of us do, I mean, I've always been a geek for dentistry. I love it. I find it to be one of the coolest business models. It's a very unique business model compared to any other. I don't think people talk about that enough. Dental offices are not like regular general, any other medical office out there. There's different elements to it. I think that's why dental consulting is such a unique space of its own. And I think having more people, more coaches like yourself and more people that can really streamline operations is going to change the game. That's what's going to help make this easier for people to do this type of treatment.
Yeah. And until you jump into the systems and say, we're broken, whether it be life or exercise or diet, or you have that self-reflection that it is broken and you do the work. So I just heard the other day, procrastination is the assassination of destination. Mm-hmm. So, and I truly believe that, it's just like, until we actually say, this is totally broken, let's fix it. And that goes back to the beginning of our talk where I say, I'm just a relentless problem solver. I fell into dentistry, made a promise to my wife's father that I'd become a dentist when I asked for her hand in marriage, and I knew nothing about dentistry. I just happened to fall here. So, but everything comes down to storytelling.
You promised your father-in-law you'd become a dentist.
Yeah. That's a story for another day, but Zaghi is amazing, and I wanted her so bad, and
that shows your perseverance right there, right?
Yeah. But everything comes down to process, and there's people. I think people know me, and there's some people that kind of call me out on it about being radically kind, fiercely patient, disruptively brave, and defiantly joyful. So, like for instance, you ask what I would help with in a practice. So, and I don't mean this to be comical or funny or making fun of, but if you went in, you've been in practices, if you went in practice and you just whispered in people's ear, that dental assistant, that front desk person, which is a piece of furniture, it's really the director of first impressions is the front desk person, not a front desk person. So, and you just kind of whispered in the ear, what's your mission statement? What's your values? I guarantee you a majority of people would be like, I have no idea, because their value statement is something like, we're going to be the best orthodontist in the Pacific Northwest that places the bracket on canine number 6 in the right position and then glues it on so we don't have, you know what I'm saying? Like, what does that mean to team and culture? Not much. So I'd love to help people, because in order to build systems, let's say clinical, we got to start with the foundation. So building a brand doesn't start with the name HealthLatch, right? It starts with the values, and the values are really simple. You pick 3 to 4 words that you love. 3 to 4 words that you love. So I picked kind, patient, brave, and joyful, right? And then you put an adjective to those, right? Radically kind, fiercely patient, disruptively brave, and defiantly joyful. Now they're alive. This is what we do every day. Now it's becoming a process, right? And we haven't even got to the name yet, right? So if you look at that as values, that's great. But to sum up this whole conversation, what did I do back in 2016 when no one believed in me? I had to be radically kind to pediatricians that were calling me a baby cutter, to Delta Dental, who was asking for the money back, right? That's happened to several of us, Marty Kaplan, myself, Richard Baxter. You know, it was dangerous times back then, right? What did we do next? After we were radically kind, we had to be fiercely patient with ourselves, because we were still learning. I was still learning about midwifery and doulas and all the things I deal with every single day as I was going. But, and then to me, the book was disruptively brave, like put myself out there. Say, you're basically, when you write a book, there's all these coaches that are just helping people get through imposter syndrome so they'll write a book. Because when you write a book, you're basically putting yourself massively out there. You're basically saying, I believe in this, and I think it's worth telling other people. And so, and then the final one is defiantly joyful. If this book hits, and I don't need it to hit like financially, I just want people to read it because people are resonating with it. So if we get to that point, we'll be defiantly joyful. So even my values are a system, right? It's a process that I went through. So I'd love to, in summary, help other people figure out like, what is their real mission when you kind of talk to them, and then how do we build systems around that to make that mission possible? So they're fulfilled, and then more people will get care.
So overall, the basic of whether it's the book, the way you're changing, the process and how even the experiences in the office, and then also really building and taking yourself and really showing all the different sides of you. So let me ask if, as we're kind of, coming to a close, and we'll wrap things up here. So we know they can find you and read the book, but is there an avenue now to find you to do some consulting and to do some one-on-one coaching?
Yes, sort of, kind of. I have to get through a little bit of the launch of the book, but in order to figure out my own systems of consulting and things like that, I have taken on some clients. And so I've been working with about one a month right now. And so again, a big thing for me is mastery only comes through niche, is what I truly believe, right? The book, The One Thing, if anybody wants to read an amazing book, read The One Thing. And basically the summary of The One Thing is, if you're really good at one thing, you can become really good at it. And it could fill you up, just that one thing. So mastery for me is I will be consulting only for pediatric dentists that are heading towards the breathing specifics. I will help them out with brand. I will help them out with other things, but I'm only interested in helping people, especially newbies, de novo practices, straight out of school. No reason to let them figure it out 15 years later, like so many of us did. Let's get them going right now. Let's let them figure out on those first exams, so they don't have, I have so many kind of nightmares about the probably tens of thousands of families that when I was doing pediatric dentistry, when they had blocked out canines and lower anterior shark teeth and deep bites. And I was just like, you got no cavities. You're good to go. I'll see you in 6 months. like those are nightmares for me now. Right. So
Yeah.
I remember specific patients, a boy in the early days who was grinding down his baby teeth literally to the gums. And he, a family friend, eventually went on to have seizures and seizure disordered breathing. And I knew him personally. So once I kind of like had that epiphany moment about how this all comes together, I thought of him. I thought of that one patient that I personally knew that if I would have known what I knew back in the early days, I could have helped him. So it's you'll eventually see a brand pop up, and it's gonna, as you know me, my wife calls me a special snowflake. It's going to be a very different brand, but yes, I'll start consulting, and I'm not going to do it like massive amounts of people. Like I will specifically do a story form. Do I match you? Do you match me? Mm-hmm. If we're not a match, it's not a match. I can let you, see some other people. But part of that, I'll be honest with you, is like helping like figure out who is the leader in the office. You've probably gone into offices where the dentist thinks they're the leader and you quickly figure out they are not the leader. So just helping people figure that as well.
It's an important part of that whole aspect. Well, I am very excited for that. And I feel like, no matter who I work with, I can't wait to be able to be sending that for you to be a resource to build that out. And, I think collaboration, especially even in business development, is a really important aspect. I always tell people like, I have multiple coaches for multiple things. I don't only just have one. And I think it's some of the best investments I've made is having a coach for the different aspects of the things I want to go and build. So having you added to that aspect is going to be really great for a lot of practitioners. So obviously, like we said, we could talk for hours. I'm super excited for everyone to get their hands on the book. I'm super excited for people to see the different techniques and the things that you're doing. So to close things up here, we have a little thing that we kind of end with at the end. We always ask people, like, when you think of the word mind your mouth, what does it mean to you?
Mind your mouth. I would relate that to kindness, right? In a world where a lot's going on right now, right? It's just like, all my posts recently, I'm not a big poster. I don't really love social media, but just been people that I've been meeting. I met Deke, who is a good friend of mine that I haven't seen in forever, wrote a post about how humble he is and how kind he is. And it's just like, mind your mouth. I think of my mom. I think of how she would have said, if you have nothing good to say, don't say it at all. So probably kindness.
I love it. I love that you brought it right back to your perfect mission statement and always showing up authentically yourself. Thank you so much, brother. I appreciate it. And we will talk to you guys soon. Thank you again, guys. This is another episode of Mind Your Mouth.